Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from the US, Christopher Paquette. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Christopher is a C-suite executive. He's a digital entrepreneur. He's a board member. He's a former McKinsey partner, and he did his MBA from Kellogg. He's also the Chief Digital and Strategy Officer for Trustmark Benefits. So, Christopher, today we're going to talk strategy, given your incredible background, and our viewers and listeners love to understand what strategy is. So, tell me, everyone talks strategy. What does the word mean in the context of large corporations?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm kind of a keep it simple guy, Ashutosh, and I think the word strategy sounds very fancy. I think at its core, though, it's pretty simple. I think it's the process of choosing where you want to compete, and importantly, where you're therefore not going to compete and what you're not going to do, and then how to win when you compete there. So you got to define what winning looks like. You have to say, well, is winning more about profitability or growth? Is it about other aspects of winning in the market in terms of experience or sustainability or other factors for your stakeholders? But at the core of it, strategy is just where are you going to compete and how are you going to win? Now, it gets more complicated than that as you start to unpack, of course, but you got to start simple to make it understandable, right? And so where to compete, it comes down to allocation of capital and resources and management attention, and what sectors you want to focus on, where you think the growth is going to be, and where the profitability is, and where you can compete distinctively. And then the how are you going to win part gets into all the rest, right? The value proposition and what problems you're going to solve for the customer. And so happy to go there. But I think the very simple answer is where to compete and how to win. That's strategy.
Wonderful. That's an absolutely clear response I've received on the definition of strategy after a long time. Thank you. So, when we talk of business, and I've been in large companies, I was an entrepreneur myself, everyone's using the word strategy, but as one looks at it, there is, as you outlined, there's a company strategy. But then given today's world, there is a digital strategy and the brand strategy, and there's HR and IT and whatever else you think of. What are some of the key components that one has to take into account to get clarity in our strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it'll flow from my previous answer. So I'll kind of tie back to that. First of all, I'd have to say, I think the word strategy is actually, I'll be provocative. I think the word strategy is actually probably overused.
Okay. And
should there be a separate IT strategy and digital strategy and analytics strategy and people strategy? And, I would say no. I think there's two types of strategies. One is the enterprise corporate strategy that's more about resource allocation, where to play, 3-5 years out, future of the industry. And then I think there's the business strategy. And the business strategy is, again, more about how to win. So if the corporate strategy is kind of more where to play, business strategy is more how to win. And all the other types of strategies need to be connected to the business strategy of how to win. And that's when you get into, okay, therefore, what types of digital channels and tools and data do we need to win, and what kind of people? And, so I think that's the framing I use. So what components do you need to develop a strategy? I think there's a lot of great frameworks out there. And so I won't try to recreate the wheel. So, in terms of where to play, you have to look at the size of the market and the growth, where are future demographics going, industry trends, using something like Michael Porter's 5 forces that we all know and love, right? With the suppliers and the buyers and the industry competition and rivalry and barriers to entry and substitutes. And how does all that work to build a place where I can compete sustainably? How that then influences where I choose to play. There are new aspects not covered explicitly under Porter. So things like, scalability of platforms in a digital business and the margins that are associated there. Those are also considerations that you have to bring in when developing your strategy and what you want to look at. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, again, where to play, how to win, and how to win. You have to have the right value proposition for the market. And so you have to be solving a real problem that exists and creating value that others are willing to pay for in a way that is sustainable and differentiated from others over time. And again, that's kind of the simple part.
Wonderful. And, when I was growing up in the corporate world, I'm talking of 4 decades ago, the word strategy was used even then. But, we didn't have the same kind of technology. Computers were just about beginning to appear in those big Burroughs B1900 huge machines. But with today's advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, blockchain, and all of them have a direct impact on strategy, for business strategy. I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, it's really expanded, I think, kind of the art of the possible of what you can get done. And of course, it's influenced the product design and what customers are asking for and expecting, and how enterprises can deliver with lower costs, things like automation and RPA and AI for decision making that a human used to have to do. And so all these are influences, and each industry in the world, each sector has different value creation points, right? And so in insurance, you take AI and you apply it to underwriting, making better pricing decisions. And in energy, you take AI and you apply it to exploration and distribution and forecasting capacity. And so they all have different impacts. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the art of the possible, and productivity just is today what it wasn't 5, 10, even 1 year ago with the advent of technology and these new tools that you can use. So therefore, a strategist needs to understand these tools in order to set an aspirational enough vision alongside the business partners that will eventually have to go execute the strategy.
Fantastic. So coming back to your 3 words of how to win, I wanted to check with you or ask you, what is the impact of culture on strategy? There are organizations which are very laid back. There are organizations which are very aggressive. So what is the role culture plays in determining strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we all have this old Peter Drucker quote of culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And what does that mean? To me, it means that strategy, it's not that strategy is not important. Strategy is important, but you have to have a strategy that works for your culture, or you're going to fail. The way that I like to think about this, Ashutosh, is, as a McKinsey guy for a long time, we had this tool called the Organizational Health Index, OHI. And in a nutshell, basically what it says is there's management practices that you have to be good at. And so these are things like, being customer centric, having an ear to the ground with regulatory inputs, authoritative leadership, people development, all the things you do that make up a culture. And ensure a healthy organization. And the big aha is that the McKinsey research shows that there's 4 types of organizations that are all successful. And you can be successful in any one of them, but you have to pick. And so that's either being kind of a creative market shaper and listening to customer needs, being a talent factory and really, really growing leaders that are great, being an execution-oriented organization where you're just operationally, fantastically sound, or having a leadership factory where it's less about talent and knowledge and more about just leadership and vision, kind of roughly paraphrased. And so anyway, the point is picking the right culture of those 4, if I can use the word culture for those leadership models or the OHI health models, has to be consistent with whatever strategy you're pursuing. And so if your strategy is to rapidly develop products for new markets that are emerging because you think you can get there faster than everyone else, well, it turns out you should probably be the market shaper and have management practices that are consistent with those. And so things like customer centricity and market insights and investing in government and regulatory research and decision making and budgeting processes to stage gate capital. Like, it's those things that ultimately you got to be good at. And the last thing I'll say is, you asked about culture, which is kind of a touchy-feely. It feels very soft, which it is in many respects. But I like the McKinsey approach as kind of a very structured guy of saying, like, okay, culture's soft, but like, let's structure it a little bit and point out the things that you have to be good at.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really effective way of thinking about this.
Wonderful. And again, drawing upon your role, as a senior setup as a partner in McKinsey and working with multiple types of organizations, how does strategy differ in a large professional company versus a family-owned organization?
Yeah, it's so I'm not sure that it does at the level that we've been talking about it.
Okay.
So let me just kind of answer that, and then I'll come back and I'll say, like, but maybe it actually does matter. So first of all, you make case it doesn't matter because it's the same questions: where to compete, how to win, what do the customers want. Is there a product market fit that satisfies customer needs and creates a real value proposition that they're going to pay for? All these are applicable for big companies, for small companies, for family owned, for private. My Trustmark is a mutual insurance company, which is different than a not-for-profit, which is different than public. And, but still we're answering the same questions. And so in some respects, you'd say, like, well, it actually doesn't matter. Now, let me contradict myself and say, like, maybe it does a little bit. And I think it matters a little bit in that the culture and the dynamics of a smaller business and the ability to, invest in a lot of different initiatives is going to be much less. And family dynamics and the culture there are going to influence the ability to move forward much more than in a large company where it's, kind of the proverbial battleship headed in the right direction. And so I think you have to think maybe a little extra harder about culture and connectivity and alignment in a smaller or family-owned business. I think you have to think a little bit more about being even more selective in which bets you're going to make as a company, as a smaller family-owned company, because you just have fewer chips to put on the poker table, if you will. And so that question about where are we going to play, where are we going to double down, I think becomes even more important.
Fascinating. And a question for you on how often should strategy be reviewed? It's something which I've often wondered. Is it an annual event? Is it every 3 years, or is it as and when necessary?
Well, I think it's like the business school answer, the consulting answer. It depends. It depends on the type of question, the level of strategy, and what company you're at. I think there are you review it when you need to based on what's changed. And so there are things that don't change more than once every year, 2 years, 3 years. And so doing a complete resizing of the market, the total addressable market, and what share of that we can get, you're not going to go do that every week. That's like a do it every year or two to make sure that we're still playing in big, profitable, growing markets. So there are aspects of market research that you do only periodically, every year or two. There are other aspects which are sort of every few weeks, every month, every couple of months, which is about the how to win part of strategy. And so are you connecting the value proposition back to the daily decisions and investments that we're making as a management team? And are you continually saying, okay, is this still working? Do we still want to continue to invest, or can we cut off the investment, or do we ramp up the investment? And so, we do that all the time as a leadership team. We say, like, is this still a bet that we want to make? And that's something that happens, every quarter, every couple of months, depending on the initiative. And then finally, there's stuff that you should visit literally every day. And you're not recrafting the strategy, but you're making decisions and saying, is this still consistent with our company's culture, with the value proposition to the client? That has to be ingrained in each employee as they operate every day. So sorry, that was probably not a clear answer, but it kind of depends. Yeah.
I mean, strategy is a, as you would say, a little bit of an amorphous kind of a subject, and you're making it very, very clear. Thank you. So my next question to you, Christopher, is for startup entrepreneurs. We have a very large number of our viewers and listeners who are startup entrepreneurs. And my question to you is, how does a startup entrepreneur develop a strategy I mean, they know how to win, or they know what they want to do to win, but they're still in a startup stage. They've got so many other things that they're working on. What is your perspective?
Yeah. So I've done this a few times and helped others do this a few times. And I think the most important advice I think that I could give is talk with customers as much as possible. And as early as possible, be demoing the products, be out in the market, because that's ultimately a really great way of confirming that you're in the right space, right? The whole where to play part. And the how to win part that you say, like, they kind of know that, and you can sense it on a day-to-day basis. But if you really get out there and you spend time with customers and you listen and you follow what they're asking for, that's probably the easiest way to ensure that you have a good product market fit, that you're in the right space in a growing market, that you're really sensing the customer demand. And so all the other stuff that I've said is important too, but if you do that, you're going to do most of the other stuff.
Okay. Now let me move to the latest buzzword, which is ESG. And I've been speaking to several corporate leaders, and everyone's talking about an ESG strategy. Some don't talk ESG, some talk of impact strategy, some people talk of the sustainability strategy. And they're all trying to dovetail this into their business strategies. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think maybe a couple things. So first of all, I think it's right to dovetail into existing business strategies and corporate strategies, as I had said before. I think ultimately ESG it comes down to maybe three things. So the first is, I think it's a risk management play initially. Are these things important? Yes. Can they lead to real near-term growth? Probably not. And so they're kind of things that you do so that other stuff doesn't blow up, in terms of governance and social awareness and sustainability and climate change, and like it's all the right stuff to do, but it's kind of more risk management. And so that's how I tend to think about it. Now that said, in the longer term, I think it can lead to real growth because you're clearing the way and removing barriers for growth later, right? With a more sustainable footprint, for example, a corporation can grow and avoid future government regulation, which, as we've seen from the past month or two and all the announcements and net zero carbon and COP26 coming up, and all the climate change stuff. I think it can lead to longer term growth. But really maybe the third thing, Ashutosh, that is important is that answering these questions of what about ESG is important to us goes all the way back to one of the first things I said about you have to define what winning looks like. Of course, growth and profitability, but also how do you keep other stakeholders happy? And this is one way to do that, where your enterprise can have a bigger vision or goal or objective that are centered around ESG objectives in addition to growth and profitability.
Amazing. So, Christopher, I'm going to move to the next segment, which is some questions for you personally. Our viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little more. So I've got, 5 or 6 questions. We'll try and see how many we can cover. But let me start with saying that, in such a diverse kind of career or set of interests, digital entrepreneur, board member, consulting, and now you said in insurance, Trustmark. What would you say are 3 key milestones or pivot points in your career?
Let's see. I think one of them has to be getting elected partner at McKinsey. I think it's McKinsey has been, just a formative part of my professional life. It's shaped who I am as a professional and as an executive. And I think being a partner there is, something really pretty special. I think the second is, leaving the firm, which happened a couple of years back, and making that decision of, well, I want to, operate and own and execute and be an executive as well. I think that's a big second decision that I made that's been a lot of fun to be out there as well. And I think that the third is, and I can't share too many details, but I think helping the very, very first startup that I was advising kind of get out and really sharing in some of the joys of their first market win, their very first customer. Wow. And just like, being there, and like, I don't want to take credit at all because it wasn't me, but being there and, being, kind of the opportunity to celebrate with the founder was just like really, really cool for me.
Amazing. My next question to you is, what are some of the core values you believe in?
Yeah. So I love this question because I have a prop that I use and I always wear, which is a bracelet. And you probably can't see it, but it has the initials SNACC, which are my family. I have three daughters, three school-age daughters, and we have these family rules or core values that we try to live by. And so SNACC. So one is S, stick together, and so this is support your family, support your friends, and just be kind of a good person and collaborative and supportive of the community. N is never give up. So persevere and, have that growth mindset. A is always try your hardest. And so this is effort and the acknowledgement that you can always improve. C is choose kind. And so this is, kind of the don't be a jerk. And then the last one is fun, which is C for crush. So just like go crush it, go have a good time. So SNACC, snack.
Fantastic. My next question, Christopher, is that from where you stand today, a successful career, and there's so much to look forward to. But as you look back, what does success mean to Christopher?
What does success mean to Christopher? That's a big, fun question. I think probably in a word, balance. Ashutosh, and for me, I think about balancing across 4 areas of, how am I spending time professionally and really kind of growing and doing something. Personally, myself as a person, hobbies, interest, exercise, health, my family, making sure that they're successful. My wife, who's a emergency room doctor, and like that she's felt supported throughout the pandemic, and my 3 daughters, and in the community, right? So giving back in some way. And so I think success is hitting on all those 4 things in the right balance. And the balance has changed over time, but I think that's a success for me.
Wonderful. So I've got time for 2 more questions. My next question is a follow-up from success, which is who or what inspires you?
Yeah, I think 2 very visible people are probably they're very different, but both good examples of profiles I like. So one is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And like, man, he's got a lot of faults too, as we've all seen. But I like the fact that he has a singular vision and he's almost maniacal about it. He's like, put men on Mars and I'm going to build everything that it takes to do that. Like, that's pretty cool to me, right? And the vision. Again, other issues with Elon that you can bring up, but and the other one is Richard Branson, who's built some like really cool businesses and had a lot of fun doing it. And so I think he kind of speaks to the balance part to me.
And my last question to you, and this is for the many people who will listen to our conversation. What would your advice be to a young individual who's starting off on her or his journey in the corporate world?
Yeah, I think, so first find a mentor, find someone who you really trust and believe in and is willing to take the time to invest in you, and ask explicitly. You'd be surprised that, there's a lot of more senior folks who've been around who are like eager to do it. Just ask them. It's an awkward conversation first, but just ask. And I think the second one is, find your passion, what you're excited about. I kind of talked about the balance and snack and my family rules and all that other stuff. That's what's working for me, but like really think through it for you. Don't take someone else's playbook.
Christopher, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for telling me in such simple words, the meaning of strategy, which is how to win. And I'm sure everyone will remember that. That's an easy way to remember it. And thank you for sharing with me your core values of SNACC and how you wear actually a band around your wrist to be able to remind you of those core values. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.